Now, the bottom line of the folks who are defending the mandate is that doing nothing is an economic activity, that Congress can reach for the Commerce Clause proper or is augmented by the necessary and proper clause, and I would argue that this claim has at least 5 major constitutional consequences, all of which both violate the fundamental principles in case law. Or first, the most obvious one, it eviscerates the dual sovereignty system, which is a key feature of our constitutional architecture, which, by the way, is not just done for pedantic or archaic purposes, but was meant to protect individual liberty by diffusing power both vertically and horizontally in the context of the federal government. In that system, for it to be viable, for it to be meaningful, the federal government has to exercise, ladies and gentlemen, limited and enumerated powers, while while the states are exercising residual sovereignty, in the words of James Madison, which is often described as police power. Now, what does it mean to exercise police power? That is the same thing as regulating people because of who they are, not because of what they do. In fact, it is the key attribute of the police power. Another key attribute of police power is that unlike regulation of individuals based upon their activities, it cannot be avoided. Nothing captures this fact better than one is dealing with the federal statute of regulating wheat or cannabis. All that one has to do to avoid coming within the regulatory ambit of that statute is not to touch, possess, handle, or do anything else that people tend to do with those commodities. By contrast, when the state of Massachusetts wants to ensure that you will be vaccinated and you're on the borders of Massachusetts, you cannot avoid this mandate. Now, to justify the claim that the federal government can regulate an activity, the federal government, in essence, argues that an activity, in this particular instance, a failure to acquire a particular good and service, happens to be medical insurance, but broader speaking, good and service is within the scope of the Commerce Clause because it has an economic footprint. The most elegant version of this argument made by Judge Kessler, which is one of the 3 judges that reached this issue, better written opinion, frankly speaking, than number 2, but still fundamentally flawed. His argument essentially proceeds as follows. A failure to purchase insurance a decision, and since both purchasing and non-purchasing decisions in the aggregate have substantial economic footprint, can be reached under the Commerce Clause, I would submit that the front end, it makes rather heroic assumptions about how people reach certain situations in life. A lot of times it doesn't involve structured decision. But more fundamentally, there's no meaningful limiting principle here because every situation, every failure to purchase, every failure to engage in, let's say, productive activity, sleeping or taking a vacation, in the aggregate, in the modern economy, has substantial economic impact. No meaningful limiting principle can be found, and therefore, under that logic, all inactivities can be swept under the Commerce Clause. The federal government is exercising general police powers. Given the Supremacy Clause, the dual sovereignty system is vitiated. Now, of course, the federal government is a bit nervous about making this argument, bereft of any meaningful limiting principle, and they're trying to come up with a backup argument which basically says healthcare is unique. Ladies and gentlemen, it ain't true. It's not unique by a long shot. All the efforts that have been made to explain how unique it is, dealing with such things as inevitability of consumption. Well, there's inevitability of consumption across a significant, sufficiently large strata of a population in every market, including market for luxuries. If there was no such inevitability of consumption, those markets would not exist. Then they talk about cost shifting. Cost shifting is ubiquitous in modern economy. In every market where you do not pay on the barrel, cash on the barrel, there is credit being extended, there's a possibility of default. Defaults occur on the scale that rivals that, exceeds that in the healthcare market, in the mortgage market, and the credit card market, market for personal bankruptcies, et cetera, et cetera.